Joe Cunningham here, Jamie on Joe with me. And joining us on the line, we have House Speaker Mike Johnson joining us. Speaker, good morning to you.
Hey, y'all. Good to hear your voices. Glad to be with you.
Glad to have you on with us. And I have to start with the most hard-hitting question I've asked any politician at any point in my career. Speaker Johnson, what are your top 3 Boys to Men songs?
Into the Road was the best. They were in my office. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, I did, and which made you immediately my favorite speaker in American history.
Well, you were already mine, Speaker.
Well, yeah, thank you. No, those guys are my age. You know, I'm in my early 50s, and they wrote half the soundtrack of our lives. I mean, that's my high school. You know, I identify with their music, and they look great. They're aging better than me, I'll tell you that. But they still have it. They're still touring. They're still doing concerts. I didn't even know that, but really, really great guys.
When I saw it on social media, immediately between the video that went kind of viral of you at one point walking off to the side and your staffers handing you Celsius and you kind of took a long sip of it after what was probably a pretty stressful day, because I'm sure there are not many that aren't stressful for you. And then that one's like, okay, this is the most relatable speaker that I've ever witnessed. So, But Speaker, speaking of stressful situations, I know there's a lot that's going on in Washington, D.C., and one of the biggest ones that you have coming up is another budget fight. But now Republicans have the White House, Republicans have the Senate. You're still in charge in the House, which means there's an opportunity to really get some fundamental changes through. And one of the tools for that is budget reconciliation, which is talked about in some political circles, but I don't know that a lot of people understand what budget reconciliation is. I know that's a tool you guys are planning to use. So what is budget reconciliation? How will Republicans use it to try to force some of these desperately needed changes through?
Yeah, it's a great question. We throw these terms around, and a lot of people are not familiar with them. I won't get too deep in the weeds, but let me give you just a very quick layman's explanation. The reconciliation process is critically important because it allows certain legislation under certain terms to pass through the Senate with a simple majority, just 51 votes, instead of the normal 60-vote threshold. So as everybody knows, we do have unified government, as you said, so we have a Republican White House, Senate, and House, but our margins are very small. So I have a 1 to 2 vote margin in the House, smallest in U.S. history, and the Republican majority in the Senate is just a little bit larger. They have 53 Republican votes there. So that's the key here. To do something with 51 votes is critical to get our agenda through. By the way, it's not just Republicans that use this. The Democrats last used it in 2021 when they passed their Partisan Inflation Reduction Act. We used it back in 2017 in the first Trump administration when we passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So it's a familiar process, but it's only used in a rare instance when you are reconciling the budget that has already been passed by Congress. So that's why they call it reconciliation. But what we're going to do this time is we're going to use this tool to use reconciliation to accomplish the promises that President Trump and all of us made on the campaign trail to unleash American energy dominance again, secure the border, prevent what will be the largest tax increase in U.S. history at the end of this year if we don't get this done. Eliminate waste and fraud and abuse and reduce the size and scope of the federal government. All of that will be in, as President Trump says, one big, beautiful bill. I literally just hung up the phone with him just right before I came on with you guys. And he was talking about that. He called me early this morning to say it again. One big, beautiful bill. I said, well, Mr. President, you need to put that out on a truth post and tweet again this morning and remind everybody that that's what we're doing. So I'm going to send him that as a suggestion, and he's going to put it out. And that's what we're working on, and that's why it's so important for the American people.
One of the big aspects of federal government that's had a lot of people worried, but is also kind of giving people hope because of what the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, is doing, is finding a lot of very necessary cuts in federal spending. But one of the potential areas of cut that is causing some problems, I've seen some very panicked stories out of the mainstream media today, is talk about proposed cuts to Medicaid. And I know you've spoken about that, things like work requirements and issues like that. There's a lot of panic in the media and among the left about this. Can you kind of explain what the Republicans could be looking at as far as reforms to Medicaid that might be that would and how it would be beneficial for the U.S.?
Yes, the Democrats are saying that, even running ads claiming that Republicans want to, quote unquote, gut Medicaid. And they're just making this up. I mean, Joe, it's just simply not true. There's no bill, no legislation to do any such thing. What we're talking about is eliminating fraud, waste, and abuse and making the program work more efficiently and effectively so that the people who need the benefits can actually get them. I mean, these programs are on a path to insolvency. Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, they're all going to go belly up, as we used to say in my legal practice, because we don't have enough funding to keep them going. Why? Because so much of it is being wasted. So one of the efficiencies that in addition to cutting out fraud, waste, and abuse, which some people estimate might be 20 or 25% of Medicaid. Okay, we just think of that. It's staggering. But once you eliminate that, there's a couple of other tweaks you could make. Work requirements, right? Like Medicaid is supposed to be a safety net, right, for people who legitimately need it. You know, for example, like a young single mother who is working as hard as she can, but simply cannot provide for her young family. Medicaid was provided to assist that young mother, to give her a hand up, and to help her take care of her family for the time that she needs that to happen. And then the hope is that one day she can roll off of Medicaid and be self-sustaining again. That's a great, beautiful program. We all support it. Mm-hmm. What we don't support is able-bodied young men who are sitting on their couches collecting Medicaid who should be out working, because if they work, they'll have more dignity and all the rest, right? So what we got to do is weed through these programs and make sure that the people who are absconding, who should not be on that, stealing the benefits from the young single mother who's working as hard as she can to survive, they should not be siphoning off that program. That is a common sense reform that every single American would support, and that's what we're after, and not to take a benefit from anyone who genuinely needs and deserves it.
And along with, I think one of the funny things, I was reading the Associated Press write-up of these potential cuts and these reforms, and they said, well, this could affect millions of people. Adding work requirements could affect millions of people. But then they also add 92% of people who receive Medicaid are already working. So how is it going to be that? How would adding work requirements be that devastating if most of the people on it are already working the required number of hours to be able to maintain those benefits under these proposals?
Well, that's right. I mean, you're looking at this very logically, and we are as well. You heard the president as recently as last night. He did an interview with Elon on Hannity, and he said Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid benefits will not be touched. And so, in other words, anyone who should be eligible and receiving that still will. Now, the Democrats are hearing all this as well. They've heard all of our assurances, but they're running ads because they have nothing else to run ads on. They don't have anything else to say. What President Trump is doing is wildly popular because it is applying common sense. And that's the main theme that you're going to see over the next 4 years is we are returning to common sense. And the DOGE effort is heroic because they're adding the elements of transparency and sunlight to the federal government and to the bloated federal bureaucracy, and that is so long overdue. I did an interview on Mark Levin's show on Fox News on Sunday night, and I explained that the reason we're so excited about this, I was meeting with Elon in his office last Monday night, and we were going through this, and I got increasingly excited, and he did as well. And I said, Elon, you're looking at this as a data analyst and a scientist. I'm looking at it as a constitutional law attorney and a historian. And what you're doing is truly historic because, Elon, at the end of the day, you're going to help us restore the original intent of the framers of the Constitution. Because what they wanted was a lean, efficient federal government that did a limited number of things that had careful oversight by Congress. But we've not been able to do that for decades because the deep state bureaucracy has been hiding the data. Well, Elon has cracked the code. He's inside the belly of the beast now, digging through all these accounts that were never shown to Congress with his algorithms. And as he said, the data doesn't lie. This is going to allow us to do a reset of the federal government. It's really, really exciting stuff.
And just kind of following on that, you talk about the overwhelming popularity. I mean, we've seen the numbers in several polls that have come out that show Americans are largely backing a lot of the policies that President Trump is pushing right now, and Republicans are enjoying levels of popularity I don't think we've seen for a while. But all of this, and the left is pushing this as fringe stuff. And you guys, I know you're, as a constitutional lawyer, anybody who can kind of read the Constitution as it was written and as it was intended by the framers, the idea that the executive branch, that the power flows from the president into the executive branch, this is not new or radical stuff, although they keep trying to tout it as radical stuff, right?
Yeah. Joe, you remember civics as I do. Some people, Democrats, seem to have forgotten it or want us to forget it. But yes, you're exactly right. The commander-in-chief, the president of the United States, is the head of the executive branch of government. When Congress, the legislative branch, sends money to the executive to fund all these agencies, it is presupposed that it will be handled in a responsible manner, that there will be fiscal sanity applied, that the president will command all of his agencies to do well by the American taxpayer and not waste it and send it overseas on crazy programs. I mean, USAID, one of the first things that Elon and the team started to uncover, they showed that we're spending millions and millions of dollars in countries around the world promoting things that are not in America's interest. I mean, $3.5 million for, quote, being LGBTQ in the Caribbean, $1.5 million to promote job opportunities for LGBTQ individuals in Serbia, $2.5 million to build electric vehicle charging stations in Vietnam. I mean, it goes on and on and on. It's crazy. It's madness. And there's no American citizen who can look at that and go, oh, yeah, we should be investing in these, the transgender opera in Peru, right? That makes a lot of sense. When we have a $36 trillion federal debt, we're bringing common sense back to this. And the people who are squealing the loudest are the ones who have been obviously benefiting from all this largesse. And I think their opposition tells you everything you need to know.
Now, Mr. Speaker, Jamie here, you mentioned earlier that, you have a majority in both houses of Congress. You have the White House. Question back to the election in November, 6th District in Louisiana, where we had Cleo Fields, a Democrat, former congressman, running against a Republican. Why wasn't more done to try to help the Republican candidate in that race, to help firm up a stronger majority, given the fact he barely missed the runoff by less than a percentage point?
Yeah, I know. I wish that we could have had a different outcome there. That, as you know, that district was drawn to elect a Democrat. I mean, this is, part of the compromise that was made in the state legislature. To my great regret, because my job is to keep and elect a larger Republican majority, and I was working all around the country to make that happen, and we did by a narrow margin. But it was a heartbreak of what happened there. And now we have two Democrats in the state, in our state's delegation in Congress, and 4 Republicans. It used to be 5-1. And that's really what the population and the demographics of the state support is that number. You've got to gerrymander and draw a crazy looking district. It looks like a diagonal line across the state in order to make that second Democrat district. And that violates the spirit of the law, I think the letter of the law. There's further litigation going on. We probably will get new districts drawn again before the next time. But that was a heartbreak to lose that one. And what happened was, on the federal level, they looked at it. Everybody looked at the analysis and said, this is drawn to be a Democrat district. There's a high probability that it will be. And so it's about an allocation of resources around the country. And much of that was over my objection, as you might imagine. So,
and that being,
this is my state, and I've got to watch it close.
Yeah. And that being said, the state did its part in creating that district. It looks like a QR code, but it's ridiculous. But I think with a stronger push, and maybe a little bit of a stronger push by some state Republican leaders, they could have made a play for it. I mean, we made a district that could elect a Democrat. Doesn't mean you have to elect a Democrat.
Right. No, that's well said. I mean, there's a lot of, we always go back and armchair quarterback the races and see what went wrong and what could have been done differently. And there was a number of these around the country. And we have at the end of this election result, we had 220 House Republicans, 215 House Democrats. And then, as y'all know, the president started culling my herd. He took three of my members out to point them in the administration. And so now we're back down to a razor-thin majority. And so it's a delicate balancing act. There's a delicate decisions that are made on allocation of resources and all the races around the country. but I had to raise over $330 million last year to spread out as much as we could around the country through the party. And there's a lot of analysis on that after the races, but we retune and refine, and we go back into the field in 2026. Every 2 years in the House. This never ends.
Yeah, and that's, I think, the other big thing is that we've already seen one, not on the House side, but on the Senate side. We're already seeing one of those races start to pop up, and that's going to be our Senate seat. We've got one Republican challenging Bill Cassidy in the Senate already. When it comes to kind of Republican on Republican fighting, we got a little bit time left here for this question, but when it comes to Republican on Republican fighting, how do you, as a leader of one of the chambers of Congress, how do you approach that in terms of, we got to do what's best for the state in terms of Republican control and voter representation? And I mean, I know that you don't publicly step in or anything, but how do you guys navigate something like that in your home state when you've got Republicans fighting Republicans?
Well, we will have a closed primary for the first time in a long time. That'll help. But what I try to do is sit down with the prospective candidates and talk through with them. Try to narrow the field down as much as we can internally, because that helps us. It certainly was important in the jungle primary system. I think the closed primary system will help us with that, and I think that's the merit, the value of it, because you'll be able to make that decision inside the party and then send your nominee out for the general election. That's the way most other states do it, and it makes a lot of sense, especially in a case like this.
Now, Mr. Speaker, news coming out this morning talks about Elon Musk mentioning a possible $5,000 DOGE rebate check for citizens, as a gesture of returning our money to us. But would that money not be better served going maybe towards paying down our national debt instead of, keeping the status quo?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I would advocate for, because if you look at it, if we're going to be responsible, we got to recognize that the debt is so high right now, $36 trillion in federal debt. We're jeopardizing the stability of the dollar on the world stage. I mean, the bond markets are uneasy because they're not sure that we can ever turn this Titanic, turn the aircraft carrier around. And that's what we need to do. So it would be a much wiser thing to pay down the debt. It's kind of like your family budget. If you get deep into debt, you don't send your kids,
don't buy a new
Christmas
car.
bonuses. You pay down the credit card. That's what we need to do.
All right, I have this last question for you, Mr. Speaker. We're going to go back to where we started here. You mentioned the song specifically, End of the Road. So I have to ask, are we as a country at the end of the road? Is that a song fitting for the times, or is there something a little more hopeful coming?
Great tie-in. And no, I'm happy to report we are going to have a true new golden age in America. All these changes and all these big things are all super positive for the country and its trajectory. And the reason I'm still involved in this is because I believe we're going to turn this country around and restore the shining city on the hill. And it's going to happen quickly. And President Trump and I were talking on the phone just this morning. This one big, beautiful bill is going to be a big part of that. The DOGE effort is going to be a part of it. And we're gonna get the country going again. And I think we can hold the Republican majority for a decade or longer when we deliver on these promises. So I am very excited and very optimistic, more than I have been in many, many years, guys. I think we've turned the corner.
Speaker Mike Johnson joining us here on Acadiana's Morning News. Speaker, thank you very much for joining us, talking with us, and we look forward to having you again.
Yeah, look forward to it. Thanks, guys. Good talking to you.